right, so welcome back to Breakfast with Bacon. We have Doug Bacon, the managing director here at Throwing Words, whose last name inspired our series. We have Julie Zalua, who we call Jay-Z, and she's the one that makes things happen. Then, of course, you have me, Lynn Ingersoll, your host. What we're doing is a series about what we're learning during this time, just to give you some context. We hope that in sharing what we're learning, it will prompt you to think about what's happening in your own life, in your own organization, and what you might learn from that. This week, Julie, Jay-Z to us, had an interesting project, which is a long-term project that she's been working on. And because of the situation, some modifications were required to just get things to work. So Jay-Z, I believe that required a hiccup that happened and some adapting on your part. So that's what our theme is this week. How about sharing what happened with us?
Sure. Thanks, Lynn. I'd love to. Although I don't like speaking about myself, I will. So we have an ongoing kind of yearly client session. And so, of course, this year, along with most things, have turned virtual. So there was some adapting and adjusting that needed to happen on the front end simply just because of the different format in which the Strengths Finder session was going to happen. But as usual, Doug and I chat and he says, here's the timeline, here's kind of what needs to happen, here are all the reporting and printings that need to occur. And there was a little bit of a difference because I would have to deliver materials in person so that they could be handed out to the participants ahead of time, ahead of the virtual session that Doug would be conducting. So again, just some different nuances and caveats this time, but I felt comfortable and I had everything thrown into Asana and was ready to go. So things were working well. And then one day, about a week ahead of the deadline for when participants were due to have their assessments complete, I received an email from the admin person at the client saying, hey, we were just wondering what time on such and such a date are you able to deliver all the materials? And I remember looking at it and thinking, that's in May. I thought I had till June, but so let me go back and look. So did some research in my notes and had written down what I thought was the right thing. And so anyways, at the end of the day, it didn't matter. It needed to be done when it needed to be done. So basically had to back up the deadline by about 5 days, which for me was not a big deal because I usually build in a buffer with the assumption that people will probably miss the deadline. And so that just gives some padding for a couple of days after that we can basically, harass in a nice way and follow up with folks to make sure that we can get everybody completed. So there's a few reports that aren't able to be run until everybody is done. And so we really need to be able to have everybody, up to par. So again, the adaptability comes with just my ability to plan ahead of time and to have it all scheduled out. And, again, with the buffer built in on the back end, then if there are some hiccups, as there was, it's not a big deal and we can continue on and be good.
So the deadline moved up a good bit. And Asana, is that your project management software?
It is, yes. We've been using it, gosh, probably at least a year and a half. It's lovely. So you just throw all your tasks that are necessary along with, who's responsible and when they're, due, and it keeps a track of everything for you chronologically.
So a lot of your strengths, responsibility, discipline, connectedness, communication, all bubbled up. And it seemed like you had a partner on the other side that was really helpful. Would you share a little bit about how that helped the situation?
Yes, she was fantastic. So she would check in with me, obviously, aside from that very first one of trying to find out, when I was going to have supplies to her, she would daily check in with me and ask, how are things looking? Who's still outstanding? Can you send me, a list and I will follow up with them. So having someone with the understanding and the talent of communicating well and having those administrative talents along with me, it made the ebb and flow really, really well because I knew that I could trust her and that she was going to be, following up with the folks on her end. And so that freed me up to not have to worry about that.
That sounds like a huge help. Doug, yes. You being our strengths guru, how about giving us the overview of the different domains and how Jay-Z's strengths really showed up in your opinion?
Yeah, sure. So as you can see, that Jay-Z's top strengths, she's got eight of her top 10 that fall into the category focused on today. So the relationship building with the blue, which is about the team, who's on the team, the care, the nurture, development. And then the purple, the executing, which is about what are we doing today. And then with Jay-Z, she sprinkles in a little of that maximizer and communication. So the maximizer is drawn to excellence. So how do we take who we are and what we're doing, make it an excellent experience? And then that communication, which is that gift of putting thoughts and ideas into words. As Jay-Z's sharing the story, and it's a lot of these strengths are lighting up in terms of responsibility. So serious about what you do, committed to that, and also that you would have a system, discipline. Let's create a system, and then let's work the system, and that you would build a system that allows for people to be people, right? Because that they're going to be. You don't know who they will be, but that there will be people who miss a deadline, and so you allocate time. You allow time for that, and because of just how intentional you are in putting that structure in place, when there is a hiccup, like I didn't mention to you, that when I talked to the client, we changed what we're going to do on the delivery, just that little detail. You had enough wiggle room built in to where it was not a derailer. It made adjustments, and I'm sure it made for an interesting few days in terms of being able to get all those things, all the details accomplished, and packaged it in such a way so that that the label on the cover of the folder is in the right place, and just how it's an excellent product. And so could totally see how the doing of the work that you built a really strong system, and how in that partner, Jenna has many of the similar talents in terms of that ownership, that checking in, and her willingness to check in is actually what pointed out where the disconnect, or lack of communication from me sharing with you had come into play there, and it happened at a point where it was not disruptive from the adjusting. So having someone who takes their job seriously and is proactively engaging you in ways that you engage others, I can totally see how that resonated too, and ended up with this, everything coming together at the right time, and a happy client.
Great. Thanks for giving us that overview. It really helps to see what the strengths are and how they emerge in the day-to-day. So Jay-Z, if you're to reflect and think about your takeaways and your main points, would you share and show us what your takeaways are?
Sure. Most of these come very naturally, as Doug just mentioned, kind of based on my strengths. So certainly at the forefront is to always have a plan. If I had no plan, I would have probably been working all weekend on getting this done, and we would have been in trouble probably. So having a plan, building in a buffer, again, just allowing yourself to not get so backed up into a deadline that if something should happen and adjustments need to be made, that completely causes you to stress out and end up with a subpar project and product. And then again, don't be an island. So most of the time there is somebody on the other side who's able to help. And luckily for me, like I said, Jenna was, very similarly wired, and it was fantastic to be able to depend on her, to be able to work with me to get it done to completion.
Great. Well, we hope that you'll be able to consider your own situations and think about how you can take these takeaways and use them for your own systems and your own organization and your own way of doing things.